Hi, I'm Emma, although if you're clicking on this video then the chances are you already know that. So today's video is designed for the cyclists in my life. This is a Yin Yoga sequence, and I'm conscious that the cyclists in my life don't actually enjoy yoga particularly, and definitely not Yin Yoga. So it's a bit of a challenge, but I've really designed this with you in mind so that it will be short and effective. I've whittled down the poses that I think will be most beneficial for you. So we're targeting the backs of the legs, the hamstrings, the hip flexors, the quads, and there's also a bit of calf stuff going on too. I have a couple of blocks handy, which I personally like to use in certainly one of the poses. If you don't have blocks, then don't worry. A couple of big books can be just as good. So let's get started. We're going to start today. Our first pose is one for the hamstrings, the backs of the legs. And it's actually the only standing pose in Yin, pretty much. It's called dangle. So bring yourself to a forward fold. And it can be actually very nice to do this with your bum up against a wall. So you may like to position yourself with one at the back of you. I'll just do it freestanding. And if you're coming into this pose and it's already feeling very tight, then please bend your knees. We're not at all looking to touch the floor. Yin, one of the reasons I love Yin is because it's completely functional. We're not worried at all about what it looks like. Everyone will look different. We're not trying to get to an end goal. There's no idea that we have to touch our toes or touch the floor. We're just moving in a general direction and we're working with a target area. So as long as you can feel it, you're doing it right. So as I say, the target area is the backs of the legs, the hamstrings, but it's very likely that you'll also feel this anywhere really along the back line of the body. Just a word on your foot placement. There's no right or wrong here. I know some people prefer to have their toes pointing out to the side, some forward, and also some people prefer to have their toes pointing in. It'll target a different aspect of the back of your legs, so find what works best for you. And I'll start my timer. We're going to hold these poses for a few minutes at a time. In this practice, they will be 3-minute holds. So as I say, if you're very tight, please feel free to bend your knees. Or alternatively, you can have your arms dangling, free dangling. That's not a saying, but I hope you know what I mean. Or if it's available, you may like to take your hands to rest on the floor. Personally, I like to clasp my elbows. It kind of takes the ego out of it for me. I find, as much as I know not to worry about going deep, touching my toes or the floor, I can sometimes get lulled into that. Whereas if I clasp my elbows, it takes any notion of that out of the equation, and I can just enjoy the sensation in the back of my body. Just noticing here, as I'm talking to you, I'm conscious of my neck beginning to tire. It's because I'm looking forward. So please remember to release your neck muscles by allowing your head to hang freely. So I mentioned there about how it's not how far we go. And this is a really important principle in Yin. We're only ever working with sensation, and we're working with moderate sensation. This is called playing your edge. So just a reminder, especially if you have a tendency to want to push yourself, push your limits, that's not what this is about. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being your maximum effort, kind of red in the face, steam coming out of your ears, and 0 being you're very bored, you can't feel anything. We're looking to be at about a 6 or a 7. So we're moderate intensity because the tissues that we're stimulating, our fascial system, our connective tissue, responds to time. So that's why we hold these poses in stillness. That's how we target these tissues and get the benefit from our yin practice. So I'll remind you of that perhaps as we go through this practice. It isn't intensity. It's all about holding for time. Be here just for one more breath. So it's important when we come out of our yin poses that we come out slowly. So the first option that you may like to take is to bend your knees more and roll up to standing. My preference is to continue down towards the floor. So that's what I'm going to do. Take it slowly. We're working deeply with the body here. So it's important that we come out with care, just to let our body settle. Oh, and we'll take a rest. You may like to come into child's pose. Perhaps rest on your back. And just notice the effect of that pose. Whoa, really, I think I suddenly got an 80s side pony. Oh, don't mind it. Okay, let's come into our next pose, which is called dragon. And we're going to be targeting the hip flexors, but I'd like to start by bringing a calf focus to this pose. So we'll start with the right leg forward, and this is when you might like to have your blocks or your books handy, or at least to hand. So you're going to step your right foot forward, and for this one, we're actually going to let the knee come forward of the foot. The idea being that we're targeting down into the calf, the back of the ankle joint. This can take a little bit of maneuvering. You can play with how far forward or back your back leg is. Don't worry about getting the heel to the floor. Depending on your ankle structure, that may never be possible. So that's not the point. The point is that you start to feel sensation at the back of your, I was going to say the back of your calf, but your calf is the back of your leg. So for me, to be most effective, I find I like to kind of lean my weight on my thigh. And sort of come over into a bit of a twist. Oh yeah. So this is stage 1 of our dragon. Target area, as I say, the calf. And then we'll move into the hip flexors in a little bit. Just notice if you're efforting here, the idea is to soften into the sensation. Perhaps your calf isn't someplace that you particularly think to target or to stretch, but whenever I do remember, I'm always confronted with how tight I am there. Okay, let's gently ease out, but we'll stay in our lunge, and now I'd like you to walk this front foot more forward. So as I say, we're targeting now the front of the back thigh, and experiment here. Sorry, I've got a really creaky floor. It's nothing I can do. You might like to turn your toes more out to the side, especially if you're here and you just sort of can't really get into it. Give yourself some space by letting this front leg wing out to the side a little bit. Personally, for me, I like to stay pretty upright, and it can be really nice if you have a support to pop that underneath your front butt cheek. This is a game changer for me. Dragon for me is very often tight, as is I think for many people. Hip flexors are a very tight area in the body. So I find this pretty nice, especially on my super tight days. You can come forward, and I like to possibly rest my hands on my blocks. Some people, though, they find it more effective to come down, even all the way down onto the floor. But I find for me, when I do this, it takes the emphasis out of the back of the leg and brings it more into the front thigh. And that's not what we're looking for. So play around so that you can find moderate sensation in the front of your back thigh. And I will set the timer. And one of the lovely things about Yin, and I think I say that a lot, I really think there are a lot of lovely things about Yin, but one of the things is how it trains us, I think, to notice the subtleties and the minutiae of sensation. As I continue to practice Yin, I find that the smaller a movement I make can often have a huge difference. It doesn't take big changes in position to make a huge change in your body. So for example, just by gently tilting my pelvis or my left hip more down towards the floor, I get a whole new experience. My throat just gurgled. Can you hear that? Oh my gosh. Having a body mic, there's no secrets. Anyway, so just noticing here, especially if all you can feel is strong, this is terrible, maybe you're going too far. Just a reminder that this is a moderate practice. Especially if Dragon is pretty intense and all you can think about is, oh my word, when is this going to be over? I've just looked at the time. It'll be over, not necessarily anytime soon. Well, we've got less than a minute to go. That's a lie. We've got over a minute to go. So it might be helpful here to become fascinated by your breath. Do you notice a change in your sensation on your inhalation? And what about when you exhale? There's no particular breathing pattern in Yin. I just would ask to check that you are breathing. If you are holding your breath or you're not able to breathe fully, that's a sign you're way past moderate. So adjust so that you can reconnect to a slow and steady breath. We'll be here for one more breath cycle. And then slowly start to inch your way out of this one. Yikes. There we go. And again, come to rest. You may like to rest on your back. I'm going to take child's pose. That feels a nice kind of counter. Might even use my block for my forehead. And just let that settle in your body. Just noticing the difference from one side to the other. And then gently making your way up, and we'll go to the other side. So the left leg comes forward now, and we'll start again with the calf. So again, for this one, it's letting the knee come forward, and you can take your back leg in a little bit closer than perhaps, oh, click, than perhaps you were before. So as I say, you may already be getting into your hip flexors, but to begin, we're really just focusing on the calf. And again, for me, that requires me to kind of lean over a little bit more to the side. In Yin, we are generally still, but of course you can adjust either to find more sensation, or perhaps you go in a little bit too strong and you need to adjust and come out a little bit. I'd always rather that you adjusted so that it became less strong than you were strong and then you just came out completely. Once you find that sweet spot, then you stay. Okay, from here let's transition now to bring the focus to the right hip flexor. So for me on this side, I do need to take my leg a little bit more out to the side to give me the space to access this pose. And then again, I'm going to stay up. So our hip flexors are generally pretty tight. For most of us anyway, we sit for long periods in the day, the night. So then if you're also cycling, or even so many hobbies and sports give us tighter hamstrings, nope, hip flexors. So this I believe to be very therapeutic really for anyone nowadays. And no matter how much I practice it every time, yes, hip flexors. Again, being mindful, perhaps, in how does your breath flow here? How's your jaw? Are you clenching at your jaw? Can you release there? We have just a minute left. I literally have nothing to say. I'm so in this with you. Just a couple more breaths. At the end of your next exhalation, gently bring yourself out. And again, you may like to take child's pose or perhaps rest on your back. This rebound is an opportunity to notice how you feel, notice the effects of the pose. So noticing perhaps a tingling or a heat, a vibration, whatever it may be. Okay, so last pose, and we're coming into what's called half saddle. This targets the quads, the front of the thighs. So we were right at the top in the hip flexors, moving down to the quads, and you may well notice that the two are connected. They are. So see how you get on with this one. So we'll start with the right leg again. And there's a couple of options here. So we'll start with the legs out in front. Bend your right knee. And if it feels okay, keep your right heel to the outside of your right hip. The one thing to be mindful here is we're feeling sensation at the front of the leg. So no pain on the inside of your knee. This is also targeting the toes and the ankles. And I know some people can be very tight at the front of their foot. They only really find that out when they do this pose. So if that's your experience here, then having a thin towel or blanket rolled up and placing it right under the front of the ankle joint can really help take that tension out. If you are experiencing knee pain, then please come to sit on your heel, and you will use whatever props you have to support your hips. So as I say, as long as you're feeling it over the front of the knee, perhaps that's fine, but just no pain on the inside of your knee. So for many people, actually, this is enough. There's a lot going on here. So again, if you can feel sensation 6 or 7 out of 10, anywhere from your thigh down to your toes, then I would say stay here. Otherwise, if nothing much is happening for you, then you can start to lean back. Don't worry about your knees having to touch. They'll sort of naturally go wherever they want to go. You lean back until you were stopped. That's very often a good parameter really to work with in Yin. Where are you stopped? Stay there, and perhaps during the course of the pose or throughout your practice, you will be invited to go deeper, but you wait for that invitation. Some of you may even come all the way down onto your back, and some of you may need to go further still, so bending this left knee, perhaps even curling it into your chest. So we're all feeling the same thing. It'll just look different for all of us. So let's do 3 minutes in this one. And for me, I quite like to rest my left foot on a block. So there's 2 sides to this. Don't be a hero. Don't go further than really you know feels good in your body. Use any support that you need. I would say if you're finding that you're trying to feel more by pressing your shin into the floor, kind of pressing your hips up or forward, that's a sign that maybe you're looking for more. So release the muscular effort and adjust your position. So that's lean back. We keep the muscles relaxed in our Yin practice. We're targeting our connective tissue. So the muscles stay relaxed. Again, just noticing your breath. Any tension in your jaw, even your abdomen. You know, if there's any clenching going on, let that go. I believe Yin to be a very therapeutic practice. As much as it can be challenging, it isn't meant to be unpleasant, and in fact, it is a lovely practice as a counter to our yang activities, so our faster paced yoga practices, hobbies or sports, or even just our lives. So it should be restful. Coming into the final few seconds really in this pose, a final few rounds of breath here. One more breath. So to come out, just bring yourself back up if you were lying down, and then roll away from your bent leg. Ooh, and release. So again, this can be a really nice one just to feel the difference from side to side. There's a lot of target areas there. You may feel the difference from one leg to the other. I can certainly feel a heat in my right leg compared to my left. Okay, one more leg, and this is the last pose. So we're coming to the end of our practice. And I just mentioned that for those of you, thinking of one of you in particular who has probably been hating every second of this. So, left leg. Bringing it in. As I say, remember, no pain on the inside of your knee. This is internal rotation that for some people is just perhaps not possible in their hips, or is just deeply uncomfortable. So don't let your knee compensate for what your hip can't do. Rather, sit up, keep your knee safe, and support your hip as you need to. Again, if you are tight on this side underneath your foot or your ankle, place the support underneath your ankle, not underneath your foot. That will actually make it stronger. So underneath your ankle. See how this goes. If you're happy here, stay here. Only if you don't feel anything, I suggest that you come back. And again, as I say, please let go of any idea that the knees need to be together. We're simply going on sensation. One of the nice things I think about, particularly when we're in a studio environment, if we're practicing Yin together, is everyone will look different. I think there's a liberation in that. We don't need to try and contort ourselves or make the shape of our neighbour, perhaps an image that we've seen in a book or online. This is your body, and you get to make the shape that works best for you. And by all means, feel free to close your eyes here. Just letting your breath flow naturally. And tuning into the sensation of your left leg. I promise you, I'm keeping an eye on the time. I won't keep you here for too much longer. We have just over a minute to go. Just a couple more breaths. At the end of your exhalation, gently make your way out. And then come to rest, maybe on your back, or you may be called to take another shape. We'll rest here, and believe it or not, this is actually perhaps the most important pose of them all. It's an opportunity to let that practice settle in your body. Make sure you're comfortable here. You may like a support for underneath your knees. Certainly a blanket. My hands are kind of blue. I'm kind of cold right now. So make sure you're comfortable. And I would encourage you to stay for as long as you can, as long as you have. Just letting the practice settle in your body. So I will leave you here. And if you need to get going with the rest of your day, please take your time in coming back, introducing gentle movement. And if you can stay, as I say, please do. Thank you so much for joining me in this practice. I hope it serves you, and I will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.